Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Washington Gun Law TV. I am Washington Gun Law President William Kirk. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Washington, it's Friday, and you know what that means. That's right. Me and Michael Easton, independent journalists, we're going to take part of your Attorney General's record, dissect it so that we can figure out, hey, does this guy really deserve to be in the governor's mansion? So today, let's just get right to it and have another Friday with Ferguson. Okay, Washington, today what we're going to be doing is taking a look at Bob Ferguson's rather braggadocious record that all of the gun laws that he's helped get passed is making your community safer. And in a moment, we're going to be joined by independent journalist Michael Easton, who's done a bunch of research. And yes, remember, all the receipts, that is everything we're going to be talking about today. If you're having a hard time believing us, hey, you don't have to. It's all linked up down below so that you can see it for yourself. So without further ado, let's bring Michael on. Okay, everyone, as promised, who do we got here? That's right, your favorite independent journalist, Michael Easton. Michael, say hi to everyone.
Hey, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Hey, listen, I want you to know that some people had previously asked, why does Michael stay anonymous when he does these videos? And Michael's true identity or how you look has never really been revealed. Why don't you just tell everybody, though, that there's a reason to this, okay? And why don't you explain what that reason is?
Yeah, it allows me to be able to get more information from people. It allows me to stay anonymous in areas where anonymity is kind of important. It also allows me to kind of blend in, allows me to go to events, allows me to put in public records requests, allows me to do a bunch of things that allows, things that if my identity was known, would not be nearly as open to be able to find those kinds of bits of information.
And so that's why you guys want to, if you want to know, that's why we just have his name listed there. Now, I do want you to know, Michael, some people thought that was kind of, I don't know, a little bit odd. So can you see that right there?
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah, so I listen, I came up with a lot of different options for you here. So, we can take a look at this one right here. I mean, I don't know. What do you think of that one?
That was a good one. I like that one. I didn't even think of that reference.
All right, then when you've seen that one already, hey, listen, we're talking about Sideshow Bob. I figured we could actually just do Sideshow Bob here. So, anyways, Michael, I'm gonna send you a bunch of these. Some viewers gave me some ideas. I came up with some other ideas, and if you want to pick one of those for perhaps next week's segment, we'll happy to put that on the screen to stand in for just the block letters. Okay, listen. Here's the myth we're going to talk about today with our Attorney General who thinks he should become our governor. The myth is this, is that Bob Ferguson's gun laws are saving lives in Washington state. Now,
patently false.
It's patently false. Okay, well, let's start with the reason we actually wanted to expose that myth is, why don't you tell us about this tweet?
The tweet that Bob Ferguson had put out on September 28th, 2023 says, "This week we won another lawsuit filed by the gun lobby seeking to roll back Washington's responsible firearm reforms. We defeated the Silent Majorities Foundation's lawsuit to abolish the high-capacity magazine sales ban. I wrote this law. It is constitutional. It is saving lives."
Okay, so we now have the Attorney General claiming that he wrote this law, which last time I checked is a little bit outside the job description of the Attorney General. And we're not going to really get into that as much as the second part of the statement, which is it's saving lives. Obviously, you have done a bunch of public disclosure requests. And then, of course, some of the data we're going to share today it's not data that you had to go digging for. This is data that's easily available. What say you when it says that these gun laws are saving lives?
That is not even remotely close to true.
Okay, why do you say that?
So I looked at the FBI crime statistics. I looked at them for the entire time that Bob Ferguson has been in office from 2012 onward. And in that time frame, according to the FBI's crime stats, violent crime is up 27.7%, which is eye-popping. And then homicides are up 61.29%, including Washington State breaking all-time records of overall homicides in 2023, I believe.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the state of Washington had broke its homicide record. King County broke its homicide record, and the city of Seattle
Mhm.
broke its homicide record. And listen, these go beyond just stats. I mean, there are some individualized stories that have captured some attention. Why don't you draw our viewers' attention to some of those really horrific stories?
Exactly. In fact, there was a pregnant woman who was shot and killed in broad daylight up in Seattle. This poor woman was shot by a dangerous person. We had an elderly woman who was shot in her home, who was doing nothing wrong except for just, being what normal little old ladies do.
Right.
And then there's even been school shootings. In fact, there was a school shooting at the Garfield High School, which led to the death of a young man there.
A really tragic incident. Yeah. And amazingly, there's a common thread to each and every one of these horrific events, which is that the shooter was not supposed to be in possession of a firearm when the shooting occurred.
Exactly, exactly. These gun laws didn't stop any of these shootings.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how we got to this point and what the role of the attorney general was. Now, we don't try to, you know, minimize here the seriousness of mass shootings. They are a real problem. They do exist and they happen with far too much frequency. And so the attorney general and the governor and the state of Washington, way back in 2018, and I want the viewer to be really aware of that. This is 2018, really just before the big push for all of this new gun legislation really started. They had a mass shooting task force. Why don't you tell the viewers about what you discovered about this mass shooting task force?
This mass shooting task force, like you said, was in 2018. It consisted of experts across every possible area, including law enforcement, school people, including the Washington State Patrol, as well as the Attorney General's office. They even had the ACLU and the Washington Council for Behavioral Health. In that, they made 25 recommendations. Of those 25 recommendations, none of them were new gun ban laws. They had things in there like funding for gun violence programs. They had examples of wanting to have more school resource officers and additional recommendations that we can post for everybody there. Of that, none of those were new gun laws. Those were all existing gun laws. And that was, like you say, before the magazine ban, before the assault weapons ban, sensitive places, permits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and some of them didn't even involve actually creating new legislation, but perhaps funding more like programs and things such as that. Uh,
Correct.
Now, the ACLU had a rather vociferous reaction to creating more school resource officers.
Hmm.
But what concerned me the most was, even though the Attorney General's office was represented, it appears that it was Yasmin Trudeau, the legislative director
Hmm.
of the Office of Attorney General. So one would think that pretty regular communication with the Attorney General.
Hmm.
Um, but Attorney General Ferguson was really upset when all 25 of these recommendations came out and even penned himself a two-page letter. Why don't you tell the viewers about that?
Correct. He was basically trying to use this as an excuse to push more gun ban laws. And so, because they had not, he came out and said that he was extremely disappointed that the group failed to include, quote, common sense, evidence-based firearm safety reforms that would make our schools and communities safer, which, of
Okay.
course, the FBI crime stats prove that to be false.
Okay, and so just we're going to go ahead and link the whole letter from the Attorney General up below because we put all the receipts down there. But I do want the viewers to understand that the Attorney General started this letter to this task force, of which his office was a member of, as follows. I agree with the recommendation of the work group. However, I am extremely disappointed that the group failed to include common sense, evidence-based firearms safety reforms that would make our schools and communities safer. Despite my request that they do so, a majority of the work group declined to support inclusion of a recommendation that Washington law be changed to limit the sale, manufacture, and transfer of ammunition magazines that hold over 10 rounds. So essentially, as I get it, Michael, he wrote a letter scolding this committee for not passing the law, the very laws that he himself wanted passed. Is that right?
That is correct, sir. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now, when we take a look at the House bill, which became the assault weapon ban, and we take a look at the Senate bill, which became the high capacity magazine ban, we will see in the top left corner that both of these bills were at the bequest of the Attorney General. So, did your information verify that Bob Ferguson's office worked very closely with members of the state legislature to try to push these laws through.
Yes, he was deeply involved in the creation of both of these bills.
Okay. Now, one thinks that when you elect a local representative, that they will go to Olympia and represent your interest. And if we're going to pass new laws, they would actually be involved in the creation of those laws. I want to talk to you about one of Attorney General Ferguson's cronies, a state legislator that we've talked about on this channel before, and that's Representative Liz Berry. You've had an opportunity to do a bunch of public disclosure requests of Miss Berry as well, have you not?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And some of those disclosure requests dealt with this time period post 2018, where it seemed that the legislative effort to disarm Washingtonians was really ramping up. Is that right?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
What, if anything, concerned you about what you discovered when you were going through all of the records that Liz Berry's office turned over to you?
The big one that jumped out at me was an email that she had got from a person within the legislative group. Her name is Edie Adams. She's not related to any of this, but she basically said, "Hey, here's the work group that I mentioned. It was the 2018 mass shootings work group, and they were charged with developing strategies for identification and intervention against potential perpetrators of mass shootings with an emphasis on school safety. Here is their report," and she links it. And then Liz Berry comes back and says, "Anything good in here, reason schools or extreme risk protections, we could roll into one of our bills."
Okay. So now this is a report, sounds like it was thoroughly researched, that's going to recommend how to make schools safer. Is that right?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And did that report recommend a magazine ban, an assault weapon ban, or anything like that?
No, sir. It didn't recommend any of those things.
Did Representative Berry seem to be really interested in any of the findings that that report had?
No. She, in fact, all she was looking for was justification for the bills that she was trying to push.
Okay. Did you find communications between Miss Berry's office and other groups that are commonly associated with the gun control efforts?
Yes, in fact, I have found numerous examples of her working with Everytown, the Moms Demands Actions people, the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, and a whole host of other gun control groups.
Okay. And I don't think it should come as a shock to anybody that politicians will communicate with outside groups, those on the left, those on the right, they both do it. What we found, and I want you to speak to this, Michael, is that they were taking a much more active role in the drafting of legislation, however, weren't they?
Yes, sir, they were.
How so?
They were actually being allowed to write whole parts and edit parts of the legislation that was coming out.
Okay. So any of the more recent gun control legislation has been shoved down Washington's throats, whether it's the magazine ban, the assault weapon ban, the pre-purchasing training requirement, the new waiting periods, the list goes on and on and on. Can you really say with any confidence that a majority of that law was written by any Washington state elected representative?
No. In fact, I would be shocked if she had any kind of input to it at all.
Now, anytime, Michael, we are debating points within any field of profession, we're going to have to get involved with expert witnesses. And there are good expert witnesses. There are bad expert witnesses. There are expert witnesses that are incredibly credible. And there are those that will say whatever they need to say once they've been paid. But the worst thing that could ever happen to an expert witness is to actually be caught lying on the record. Now, you've noticed that there were a lot of other experts that were working closely with the Attorney General's office and with Ms. Berry during this period of time as they're drafting all of this legislation. Why don't you tell us about what you began to discover?
Yes, I found a Dr. Saul Cornell that his name has popped up numerous times in there. And when I did some research on him, I found that he had admitted that he had lied about gun data in various court cases. In fact, we'll link that below. But the interesting part was that he admitted that he had lied about the gun data in May of 2022. However, Bob Ferguson had looked to hire him in August of 2022. So they knew that he had already admitted that he had lied to people in court, but then they hired him anyway. And interestingly enough, he charges $1,000 an hour, and they have paid him almost $500,000 to date.
Okay, so just so the viewers understand this timeline, in May of last year, or 22, in May of 22, it comes out that he admits that he has lied on the record before, correct?
Right. Correct.
Months later, the Attorney General's office starts looking at potentially hiring him, which I don't have a problem with that. But they most assuredly would have uncovered this information. Is that right? I mean, you
Yes,
had
this
no
was
problem
easily.
finding it.
No, this was easily Googleable.
Okay, so this wasn't even a product of a public disclosure request. You just Google the guy's name and it comes up this way.
Correct. That is correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. And yet they choose to hire him anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's cost the taxpayers how much so far?
I'd have to get an exact amount, but we're fast approaching $500,000.
Okay. Okay. So we add that to the 16.2 million that we talked about on last week's episode, and you can understand that's a pretty expensive attorney general we have running here, didn't it?
It is.
Okay, so Michael, let's go full circle now. Okay, knowing what you know, and that includes the stuff you obtained through public disclosure requests. That also includes the stuff that just anybody could Google and find out for themselves. And then it also includes your own personal experience, because you and I are lifelong Washington residents. We live in communities inside of Washington State. My question to you is this: how well is Bob Ferguson's laws working out to make us safer?
It is a complete abject failure.
And why do you say that?
I say that because I've looked at the FBI crime statistics. I've seen the issues going on with various shootings that go on there, and we are now ranked the #1 most dangerous state in the country.
Well, and let us also talk about perhaps another reason why we are the most dangerous state in the country, because not only have we passed a bunch of laws that candidly don't affect the criminal element one bit, but we've also depoliced our community. Where does Washington State rank as far as number of officers per capita?
We are dead last.
We are dead last. And I noticed that he suddenly wants to fix that problem, but it would appear that the problem was created when him and his crony Jay Inslee were running this state.
That is correct. In fact, they had clearly shown the police officers in this state that they were not welcome, that they would happily try to sue them or try to jail them, even for completely justifiable reasons.
Or fire them for making an independent health choice.
Exactly. In fact, he's been doing that as well. And the worst part is that they yanked back all of the school resource officers from Seattle Public Schools.
Yep. And how's that worked out? Let's talk about what happened at Garfield.
We've had, unfortunately, a poor young man lost his life at a shooting at a high school up there.
All right, Michael, a couple things, and we'll wrap this up. Number one, tell the viewers what's all down below in the description box, because, you know, we always promise we're going to bring the receipt. What are they going to do?
We're going to link up absolutely everything, screenshots, links, documents, everything.
Okay. And then, in case they've been living under a rock and they don't know how to follow Michael Easton, why don't you tell us how they do that?
You can follow me on Twitter at Michael Easton WA.
All right. Listen, he is Michael Easton. He always brings the receipts. Michael, thank you very much. I look forward to talking to you next week.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
Well, Washington, whether you need the data or not, you know for yourself, because you're all big boys and you're big girls. You live in this community yourself, that this state is far less safer today than it was 12 years ago. And one of the reasons is we keep passing gun laws that are going to affect you, even though you're not the problem. Another big reason is, well, for whatever reason, we've decided we need to depolice our community. And now the person responsible for all that, well, he thinks he deserves to be your governor. Listen, like we said earlier, all the receipts that Michael brought with him are linked up down below in the description box. If you got more questions about this or anything else related to what's left of Washington State, which ain't much, all of our contact information is also down there in the description box. Maybe you got an idea for a video we should be doing around here. If you do, go ahead and click on that link and let us know, because it's probably better than any idea we come up with. Maybe you just want to be part of our monthly newsletter. The ability to subscribe to that is down there in the description box. And then finally, and most importantly, let's everyone remember that part of being the lawful and responsible gun owner, like we talk about all the time here, is to know what the law is in every situation, how it applies to you in any instance that you may find yourself. Until next time, keep fighting, Washington, and stay safe.